In Tron Ares, a highly sophisticated program named Ares leads onto the digital world onto Earth in order to take on a dangerous mission that could lead to the end of income. Welcome Cinema, where we focus on a film. I'm Josh, this is Simply Cinema. Let me know down in the comments below what you thought of Tron Ares. Was it good, was it bad, or somewhere right in the middle? Or if you're waiting for this review to decide if you're going to see it or not, and taking it right in positive. Tron Ares is remarkably great within the way it goes about its story with fantastic visuals and VFX, the red lighting and everything that flows on throughout just pulls about a compelling story inspired by Pinocchio in this one way that this villain sort of has the digital essence that once he gets into the real world, once they put on that programming that is able to digitize the Tron universe into the real world, they pull about this compelling motive in order for this one main villain that is controlled by the head of this other company that wants to become a real person. And so that pulls about an interesting route for this story to take, for this franchise to lead onto, that hints toward possibly another film if successful enough. But that leads onto these remarkable notes coming about along the way that feels like it has the general story tempo that the previous two Tron movies do, with lots of action, lots of entertainment, lots of fights that will pull about along the way, with a great soundtrack that leads on the cast and everything done with the action from Nine Inch Nails, which pulls about yet another amazing score for this to pull onto. And even as teased in the trailer, there's some great scenes with the 80s retro style vibe near the end of the film that pulls about something great and nostalgic, even for someone such as myself that watched the original for the first time. There's just a nostalgic feel to the video game style touch that really adds some great elements, and pulling in the Tron universe or elements from that into the real world pulls off the Pixels movie type of vibe within this one, which really balances out something fantastic for the nature of what we otherwise hadn't seen from this franchise before. And only 3 films in, it feels like a fresh and innovative way to take on this project, while there isn't a highly complex script, complex characters to pull about from this script as a whole. There's just something that feels familiar with this sense of vibe that within the previous 2 Tron films, you didn't get anything complex. And so this feels about the relatively same amount of void that you've gotten before, with just generally an amount that you come to expect and enjoy the action that comes about along the way. And of course, I have to mention the cast, which were fantastic for what they were given, doing and delivering on the lines they were given. Jared Leto being that type of guy as Ares that really handles the mannerisms well of wanting that desire to become real, and going on to Jodie Turner-Smith, who later becomes more prominent as part of the villain role, and there's a deep desire within her character that's stone cold and always trying to follow the direction that becomes very interesting following about along the way. Evan Peters, also sort of that one note villain for being evil for the sake of being evil, that goes about as the one controlling all the system, has the mother over him, but leads on this company that's Dillinger in order to try and take control of where he's going on with that operation. And then what we're getting at Greta Lee, she's great just as well. We don't get nearly as much for her, but there's still something that's really landing well with just the whole entire cast and how they deliver on what they actually have to offer. And taking it into mix elements, there's things about the story as a whole that are relatively dry, unfortunately, because the moderate script, some things done with the ideas just don't really grip me, pull me in throughout. You just go in for the entertainment, the action scenes, and the visuals just as well. Whereas otherwise, there's certain aspects, the idea that they're pulling about a Pinocchio style story for the digital realm, that is, unfortunately for me, less compelling than what we've gotten out of the previous two films. Now, that doesn't make this inherently an awful film. I was just less interested in this one than what we've gotten before, where we're pulling about Jared Leto into this role that some of the characters and all of the performances throughout feel like they're sort of going along with emotions because it doesn't have this tight, well written script. It's not necessarily gripping me with all the character motives, certain things that are pulling about along the way, and you'll really have to just gravitate towards that Pinocchio style story into the idea that if you are going to love it, you have to love that. If you just are not interested, it may lose your interest at certain points. Maybe you'll be falling into the action and everything that goes about, which is where I fell into it, is falling about all those different notes, the visuals, the ideas. It wasn't inherently a bad story, but there were some absent ingredients that would have otherwise made it just that much better. And there were sort of different things here and there that could have taken your suspense of disbelief out of where you're falling about with this story and what it ultimately has to offer. Which takes me into the negatives. Unfortunately, with all that I had to say about positively, there's just things here and there where there's contrivances, there's inconsistencies with the powers, with what's pulling this story forward. And while the story is fair for its own instance, there's just certain things about the characters that you don't necessarily care about the motivations because they are pretty much void of them, and everything you're getting about with the villains that are pretty one note, the protagonists that don't have a lot to offer, they don't necessarily have much of a character arc. It's just these two different companies feuding in order to get this one successful attempt at bringing the digital world into real life. You're not understanding the end goal here, that yes, it could be cool to bring AI into this real world, but we aren't seeing the background knowledge where we're attempting to have a reason to do that, to have an end game with all that bringing it into the real world. Nothing is really clear or cut for the formality of this story to have a purpose, to have a full story. So while it can bring the entertainment, we don't necessarily have the reason behind the entertainment. And while there is some pretty good brooding characters here and there throughout, it's just very void and inconsistent of everything that ultimately is trying to offer, in the sense that it's providing reasons or providing things here and there that, even though it could bring about a sense of entertainment, it's not necessarily feeling like it's void of anything that will offer the proper means to an end for what you're getting out of this project as a whole. So that's just my personal thoughts on Tron Ares, which I have to rate a simply 6.5 out of 10. Let me know down in the comments below what you thought of Tron Ares. Was it good? Was it bad? Or somewhere right in the middle? Or if you're waiting for this review to decide if you're going to see it or not. And make sure to like this video if you enjoy it. Subscribe if you haven't already to join in film culture community where we talk about the love of cinema as a whole. So that's just all, and make sure to do yourself a favor and go watch a movie.